Welcome to Preparing for Online Delivery, a video series on planning, organizing, and teaching in an online environment. I am Bree Smith, the Media Trainer and Communications Lead in the Academic Development Center and your moderator for these videos. I am joined by three of my colleagues from the ADC.
Hi, I'm Patty Mascaro, and I'm one of the instructional designers on the instructional design team in the ADC.
Hello, I am Luciano Santos, Faculty Development Consultant at ADC.
Hello, everybody. My name is John Cheeseman. I am an educational technologist in the ADC. So in this video series, we're going to be covering the aspects of the pod site, so preparing for online delivery, which will be your main resource for preparing for fall. And in that site, we've broken down the site into three areas of planning, organizing, and then teaching. So in these video sessions, we'll be covering these three topics.
The first part of the series is how to plan your course for remote delivery, starting with this video on where to begin. I invite Patty to get us rolling.
Thanks, Bree. And that was a very big question that came up when we were talking with faculty. It seems like such a big thing to be looking at remote delivery, alternative delivery in the fall. And so what I'd like to do now is share with you a resource created by the instructional design team in ADC. And it's called Preparing for Online Delivery. So, and pod for short, so you'll hear us referring to the pod site. And on this page, I'm on the Quick Start Guide. And here you'll see that we have three phases for you to think about. We've got plan, set up your Blackboard course, and teach. And by breaking this big endeavor up into three different phases, it will really help you in getting your course ready for fall. So we're going to focus in on the plan piece right now. And as we've mentioned before, we'll focus on step 2 and step 3 in other videos. So when it comes to planning, the first thing to do, and I'm just going to scroll down here just so that you can also see some of what the pod site says, is really looking back to your syllabus and looking at those course outcomes, because this is an opportunity for you to review those outcomes, to tweak them if that's something within the purview of individual faculty members in your area. And with those learning outcomes, take a look at, well, what are the activities that you're doing with your students to help them meet those objectives? And then with the assessments, how are students going to be demonstrating those? So those learning objectives are really going to lead you in figuring out how to do this alternative delivery. Next, you're probably going to want to prioritize what content and materials you'll be using going forward. So that whole prioritizing thing, what's really important, what is key in this course for your students to get out of it? 5 years down the road, what is it that you want them to remember? And that prioritization will also help you as you're developing activities and assessments. On this page for planning, we have other considerations for you to think about, such as your teaching style, the delivery method, whether you're doing synchronous or asynchronous, and what kinds of adaptations and alternatives you might think about. So, as well as academic integrity. The later videos will delve into some of these things in more detail. I think the key piece here is really evaluating those learning objectives, your or outcomes, and your activities and assessments. Now, you're kind of in the brainstorming phase as well. And so you may want to be getting ideas like, well, what kinds of alternative assessments could I do? What kinds of activities could I do online? As I said, we'll talk about this a little bit more in other videos, but I'll just bring your attention to the comprehensive guide on this for online delivery site, because there are all kinds of resources and links where you'll see some examples. Also, feel free to talk to some of your colleagues and brainstorm some ideas there. That planning piece is really key for the rest of your course development for remote delivery. I'll turn things over to my colleagues, Luciano or John, just to see if they have any pieces to add just around the importance of this planning stage.
Thanks, Patty. I really want to reinforce what you just mentioned. Please take some time and invest in that planning stage. It might look counterproductive. You might perceive as you're not producing materials that are going to be used in your course, but in reality, that will save you some time later on, because that will allow you to first really understand what you want to get in your course. And more than that, it allows you to reflect on what kind of materials, content, experiences you can really maintain in your course, as opposed to taking it out. In an online environment, that's this rapid transition to online and remote delivery that we are facing for fall. It's really hard to copy and paste a course that we used to do in a face-to-face environment and transfer that to an online environment. The literature does not support that. So in this planning phase, you have the opportunity to really revisit your learning objectives, and through that lens, filter out what components of the course you really want to maintain and then adapt, and what components of your course you can take aside for next time.
Absolutely. I'm just going to jump in on this as well. This is really the critical portion of your planning, is starting with your learning objectives. As Luciano said, do not try to just import your face-to-face class into an online environment. You will not be successful. This is not the way to go about transitioning to online. In fact, what you really want to do is really streamline your course and make just these beautiful alignments between your learning objectives and your assessments and what the students are doing and the content you're posting. So really, just be really strategic with your learning objectives. We don't want to compromise the integrity of your course. We want the students to have competencies when they finish the course, but really take a critical eye to your course outline and look at what you're having the students do, and then think about what that looks like in this new environment that we're working in. Maybe you had some activities that seemed pretty fun and engaging in the face-to-face class, but when you try to import it into the online world, it might be really difficult to achieve the same effect, or the workload suddenly becomes a little different because we're working remotely. So those are things to consider as you move through your course outline and your learning objectives. So please be laser focused, and you'll hear me say this in later videos as well, on your learning objectives. You don't want to have too much, you don't want to have too little. You just want to find that perfect spot where you will keep your sanity and your students will keep their sanity, but everybody's still on that learning journey and getting a quality educational experience out of this.
So thanks, John and Luciano, for that. In other videos, we'll show you some tools that will help you with this constructive alignment, aligning your learning objectives or outcomes with your assessments and your activities for students. And so we'll explore a mapping tool to help you create a structure for your course that allows you to do this alignment in another video. And throughout the site, there are guiding questions to help you think about all of these things, whether it's assessments, activities, and how they connect to the learning outcomes.
That wraps up this video on where to begin when planning your course. Thanks to Patty, John, and Luciano for your great recommendations. In the next video, we continue the planning discussion by addressing different methods for remote delivery. Bye for now.